If you're a qualitative researcher, you've probably had at least one moment where you've thought, do I really need a conceptual framework? Aren't those just for quantitative studies with loads of variables and fancy diagrams? What even is a conceptual framework? If that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. I lose track of the number of qualitative PhD students I've spoken with who feel a bit about conceptual frameworks. But here's the thing. Conceptual frameworks are just as important and just as useful in qualitative studies as they are in quantitative ones. In fact, I'd argue that they can be even more helpful when you're dealing with complex topics like people's experiences and feelings and emotions. If you've been wondering whether you should use a conceptual framework in your qualitative study, the short answer is yes. If we've not met before, hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Yardley. Now think of me as your PhD cheerleader. I am here to help you get out of your own way and get that PhD done. A conceptual framework is something that you might find helpful in having a bit of a shift in terms of how you're thinking about your research. Because a lot of PhD students, once they start developing a conceptual framework, they get these light bulb moments. Things become clearer. You start to see connections and issues, and you think about ideas that you never really thought of before, or you think about them in different ways. If that happens during this video, drop a comment below and let me know what it was that resonated with you. And in doing that, you might help somebody else have a light bulb moment, so get typing. Anyway, first things first, what is a conceptual framework? Think of your conceptual framework as your research roadmap. Imagine planning a trip to a new place. You wouldn't set off with no map, no GPS, no general idea of where you're going, would you? You would want to know where you're going, how to get there, what route you were going to take. And that is pretty much what a conceptual framework does for your research. It lays out the concepts and the ideas that are important for your study, and it helps you think about how those ideas are connected and how that's helpful for your topic. For qualitative researchers, your conceptual framework is often based on how you see the world, your paradigm, your beliefs, your assumptions, as well as what other researchers have said about your topic. And I get that there's a bit of a reluctance among qualitative researchers to use conceptual frameworks. I do get that, I really do. Because in qualitative research, we're supposed to be exploratory and open and don't fence me in, dude. So the idea of working within a framework might seem a bit restrictive, but hear me out. A conceptual framework doesn't box you in. It gives you clarity and focus, and here's why that matters. It helps you decide what to pay attention to and what not to pay attention to. It shows your readers, so your examiner, your supervisors, that you have got a clear grounding for your research. It connects your study to the existing literature, so you're not reinventing the wheel. And it makes your research questions, your method, your approach a whole lot more coherent. And most importantly, it helps you stay on track. It protects you to a degree from the shiny object syndrome that can happen when you're doing a qualitative project. So how do you go about designing a conceptual framework for your research? Okay, here's the part where most people get stuck. You know, you need a framework, and at this stage you might want a framework, but how do you bring it into reality? Here is a step-by-step process that works, even if you're completely new to this. Step 1, start with your research title and questions. What are you trying to find out? What problem or issue are you studying? For example, how do remote workers experience work-life balance? What helps people rebuild their lives after a relationship breakup? How do international students navigate feelings of belonging? These questions are your starting point. Your conceptual framework needs to connect with them. Now, if you're a bit stuck when it comes to research questions, or if you don't actually have any, which is fine because a lot of people don't, I made a video about that recently, which I'm going to link to on the screen right now, and I will pop it in the description for later as well. So go and take a look at that, because by the time you finish that video, you will have at least one research question, okay? And then you can come back to this video and pick it back up again. So yeah, research questions, important. Step 2 is to do a targeted literature review. Look for theories and models and concepts that other researchers have used to talk about your topic. For example, if you're exploring team building at work, you might find theories like this helpful. Tuckman's stages of group development, forming, storming, norming, performing, etc. How teams evolve over time. Belbin's team roles model, and this is about the different roles that people play in teams, like coordinator or implementer. Amy Edmondson's psychological safety, and this is about whether team members feel safe to speak up or take risks without fear of embarrassment or punishment. So those are some of the theories, some of the ideas and concepts that you might come across if that was your topic. Now, you don't need to include every theory, every concept, every idea under the sun. You've just got to look for the main ones that fit your research focus. Step 3 is to choose your key concepts. Pick out the main ideas that are going to be helpful to explain what's going on in your study. So look at what you came across in your literature review and say, okay, who are the key players here? Let's say you're researching international students and their experience of academic writing in English. Your key concepts might be linguistic capital, identity negotiation, academic literacies. These are the lenses through which you'll interpret your findings. Step 4 is to show how those concepts connect to each other. Once you've chosen the key theories, the ideas, the concepts, the issues, you need to look at how they connect. How do they fit together? You need to give your reader a really clear picture of how these things are going to guide your research, how they're going to help you see and understand your topic. Think of it kind of like explaining how the different ingredients in a recipe all work together to make that dish taste good. Each one has a distinctive role to play. Here's how you might write that up. This research draws on social identity theory to explore how team members see themselves as part of the group and how this sense of belonging influences their engagement and motivation. It also uses Tuckman's model of group development to show how teams evolve over time, focusing on how challenges like conflict or role confusion impact team cohesion. Finally, the concept of psychological safety is used to understand whether team members feel safe to speak up and contribute ideas, which is essential for effective collaboration. Step 5 is to explain why you're using all of these things. Once you've chosen the theories, the ideas, the models, the concepts that make sense for your study, you need to explain why you're using them. And this is the part where you can show your examiner how you've made thoughtful and informed choices. Not just name drop something that sounded impressive. Think of this in the same way that you tell somebody why you've chosen a particular tool for a specific job. I'm using a hammer because it's more effective at knocking the nails in than a spanner. Here are some examples of how you can explain your choices in ways that are clear and make sense. Social identity theory is helpful for this research on team building because it explains how people's sense of belonging to a team influences their behaviour, loyalty and motivation. Tuckman's model of group development is relevant to this study because it provides a practical way to understand how teams typically progress over time, from forming to performing, and where challenges like conflict and role confusion may arise. Belbin's team roles model offers a useful framework for analysing how different individuals contribute to team tasks, highlighting how diverse roles like coordinator or implementer are needed for successful collaboration. And taking the time to do this, to explain why you've used these particular things, is really important. Because having a conceptual framework as a qualitative researcher isn't just a box-ticking exercise. It's there to support your research and show that you have thought really carefully about how you're going to explore your topic. When you explain your choices clearly, it gives your study focus. And it shows your reader that you're confident that you know exactly what you're doing, even if you don't always feel that way. What does a qualitative conceptual framework look like? This part is totally flexible. It depends on your style, your topic, your preferences. There are 3 main ways that you might go about showing your conceptual framework to the person reading your thesis. You might have a diagram, like this example, where you've got boxes showing the different concepts and ideas, and arrows and lines showing how they relate to each other. You might have a written explanation, so it might be a paragraph or 2. where you describe how concepts and theories and ideas and models relate to your study. It might be a table. You might have a column for your concept, theory, or idea, one for how it applies to your study, and then one for how that links to your questions or methods. Have you had any light bulb moments in this video? Have you started to think about your conceptual framework and some of the things that make it up? If so, drop them in the comments. Popping up on your screen right now is another video you might find helpful if you're starting to think about all things conceptual and theoretical. It's my introductory video all about paradigms. Ew, yeah, yuck, paradigms, I know. But they are actually much easier to get to grips with than you might think. So go and check that out. I'll see you in there.